So we just learned about frames, and we also know there's sections and groups in Figma. And so we'd love to talk through what are each of those and when should we use them? Starting with sections. When should we use sections, Lauren?
Yeah, so sections are a really great way to organize everything that we have going on in Figma. We know it's an infinite canvas, which is amazing, but sometimes we want to really zoom in, and that's what sections are really great for. So we have our sections here, one section of just all of the work that we've been working on, just to keep it in one space. It's really great just for organization. I'd say the key thing to remember with section is organizing all of your different content.
Makes sense. And then we have frames. What are frames and when should we use those?
Yeah, so frames are going to be your containers. These are going to be either your screens or these are going to be something that houses your content that you're working on. And we can have multiple frames and frames and frames. We're going to likely have that. We're going to have our frames that are either our mobile phones, our desktop, whatever screens we're working on, but then we might have cards within those screens. We might have multiple different layers of frames. So the key with frames is frames are what's going to hold our content, and they're a foundational piece for a lot of different things that we're going to get into later in Figma.
And lastly, then we have groups. What are groups and when should we use those?
So groups are a really great way to bring together content that you want to move together. So I like to use groups versus frames if I just want to have a ton of shapes that I'm kind of trying to figure out where the position are, but they all need to go together. Versus frames is something that I either want to have a background to, or maybe I want to clip the content. So for example, when we were looking at our hero image, we have some shapes that we're actually cutting off. We're using clip content here. So that kind of cuts it at the edge at those exact corners. That's not something we can do with groups right here. Another thing that we can do with frames that we can't do with groups is I can add a background. So like if I wanted to add a background image, or if I wanted to add in a gradient here, that's something that I can do on my frame that I can't necessarily do with a group. I'd have to actually have that be another layer of my group.
Great, so frames seem very powerful, but we often have common questions that we get with frames. Let's dig into a few of those now, starting with how do I know when something is in the frame?
Good question. So we're going to be looking at the layers panel here. So with the layers panel, we can actually see what is a group versus a section versus a frame with the different icons here.
Yeah.
And within the layers panel as well, we'll be able to see what is included in those groups, frames, sections. So with this object right here, which is actually a group, we want to make sure that this is in the frame by making sure that it actually goes nested within here. So as I'm clicked on to my group right here, we want to make sure it's in our frame, and you'll see that it moves into the grouping here as I move this around. If it's seeming like it's something that's not actually going into your frame right here, I think I have it in my frame, but as I move this around, it's not actually inside of my frame. You can just manually move this into your frame. So I'm just clicking on it and dragging it into my frame here. And now, even though it's outside physically looking of the frame, it is inside of my frame here. So the layers panel is key here.
So helpful when I go to move that thing. I'm like, where did my object go?
Absolutely.
Great. And then last question, Lauren, do you create the frame first or do you create it after you have your content?
The answer nobody likes to hear, it depends. So if I'm working on a screen, maybe it's a mobile or a desktop screen, I'm going to create that screen first and then start to put my content within it. But those frames that are inside of those screens, I probably will create the content first and then wrap them in a frame, which the way to wrap something in a frame is the shortcut on a Mac, Command, Option, G, that wraps everything in a frame right there. So I do a mix of both, kind of depending on what the situation is.
Makes a lot of sense. So just to recap, we have sections for organization, we have frames as a container for our content, and we have groups, which is a collection of layers. Is that right?
Amazing. Perfect.
Fantastic. Let's go start using them.